Um, so we're just going to talk a little bit about food medicine. So if I'm a little scattered tonight, y'all forgive me, you'll know why. It's been a long day. But I am a family physician and trained traditionally, if you will, but also believe God gave us everything we need on this green earth to be healthy. You know, it's like church and everything else, we kind of love all that up. His design was perfect, ours less so. However, there's a time and place for all other forms of medicine. He gives us wisdom, he gives us knowledge on things to do that. So, but today I want to talk just a little bit about food as medicine in particular. And if I have time, we'll talk a little bit about our farm and what we've sort of switched to and how maybe beef isn't the enemy after all. So the concept of food as medicine is actually a phrase that most farmers and most people in this room probably can understand without having to have it explained. But the Department of Health and Human Services with the NIH formalized the concept with some government-funded programming from 2021 to 2025. And you know, the government does a great job with all the kind of programming, but they actually did get some great studies and some great information. Their programs particularly included medically tailored meals, medically tailored groceries, and produce prescription programs for vulnerable populations. Some of those populations were veterans. They showed a significant difference in the health of those people just in the short term through using food as medicine. Whole foods and nutrients can actively support health and help manage disease. Sorry, I forgot my notes. I told y'all I was scattered. So I may move around a little bit. And holistic wellness, of course, begins with prevention, and food is a key part of that. I'll probably mention it again at the end, but I tell all my patients that what you eat is probably more important than what you do. You can't out-exercise a bad diet. And the other very underrated thing, the things we talk about way less than we should, is good quality sleep. It's so important for our health, restoration. So there's a lot of scientific evidence supporting food as medicine. The WHO estimates that over 80% of diseases that we see in the world today could be prevented by a healthier diet. And an inflammatory diet reduces disease markers by up to 40%. That goes for a lot of like thyroid disease. Your gut biome health is directly linked to your immune function. If any of you have Netflix or enjoy Netflix, there's a great documentary about gut biomes on there. Of course, I'm forgetting the name of it, but you could probably just search gut biome and pop it up. But it's fascinating. The USDA associates poor dietary habits with more than 500,000 deaths in the US every year. 1 in 5 deaths globally is linked to a poor diet. That's more than any other risk factor, including tobacco use. And $1.1 trillion per year in healthcare costs are related to what we eat, which is equal to what the U.S. spends on food itself in a year. And like I said, my husband's been in the hospital with his heart. You know, as Americans, I think it's easy to know the information. It's a whole different thing to implement the information. We live by convenience. So some examples of medicinal foods. Turmeric has anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. Leafy greens are rich in vitamins and detoxification. Berries are antioxidants that protect cells. Garlic has antimicrobial, cardiovascular support, and fermented foods promote your gut biome. Our body needs a wide variety of things, and all of these can be found in healthy foods. We need carbohydrates. Carbohydrates aren't necessarily our enemy. We need protein, we need fats, we need vitamins and minerals, and of course, water is super important. Strictly speaking, as far as medicinal foods, berries, like I said, are high in antioxidants. They're good for heart disease and cognitive decline. Leafy greens help prevent issues related to high blood pressure, eye diseases, fatty fish, are good for heart disease and high triglycerides, turmeric for inflammatory conditions. A lot of people that wind up with thyroid disease in our country, it's an inflammatory process, so turmeric can be really helpful. Garlic, for high blood pressure, yogurt, keefers for the digestive health, nuts are good for diabetes and for heart disease risk. And then beans are good for cholesterol and balancing blood sugar. So when we talk about food as medicine, we talk a lot of times about superfoods, which are not a magic bullet, but they are super important. And that's a term that was introduced in the 90s really as a marketing term. But as it turns out, we've learned a lot about that since then. It's just a classification of really nutrient-rich foods. And guess what? None of them are highly processed. They're all pretty naturally occurring foods. They aren't foods or one-stop shops, but they are important to incorporate into your diet overall. And they are high in all the components of things that you need, like fiber, vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, polyphenols, saponins, on and on. And they're low in the nasty things that affect our health. Antioxidants are what make superfoods special, really, and those are natural molecules that occur in superfoods. They naturalize free radicals in our bodies. So just the natural process of breathing and our everyday metabolism creates free radicals. And so antioxidants balance out that free radical oxygen. And those free radicals are what kind of wreak havoc in your body. Create a lot of inflammation in your blood vessels and your organ systems that lead to heart disease, cancer, arthritis, stroke, respiratory diseases, emphysema, Parkinson's disease. But regularly eating fruits, vegetables, and superfoods, of course, are strongly associated with lowering the risk of a lot of those disease processes. And of course, there's benefits like healthy hair, nails, and skin, and increased energy levels, and also eating those superfoods can help achieve a balanced, healthy weight. And I think one thing we don't that has come more to light in recent years with this weight loss craze, weight loss medications that are out there, is that more than 20% of cancers are directly associated with obesity, more than any other risk factor. So we live in USDA Zone 8A, and this is just a list of superfoods that thrive in our growing area, several of which were on the table tonight and was delicious. Thanks to all who contributed to supper. It was very good. I've tried to grow and failed at growing a lot of these. Some I've done okay with, a lot I've tried and failed. And when you want to talk about food as medicine, you want a healthy, balanced plate. You want half your plate to be fruits and veggies, quarter of your plate to be whole grains, quarter of your plate to be a good, healthy protein, and then you want to wash it down with a nice cold glass of water. Something else that is important to consider when we're talking about food as medicine is food miles. Food miles is basically how far something travels from the place where it's going to the place where it's eating, that farm to table. How many miles is that? So minimizing food miles maximizes nutritional value. Foods that travel a long distance lose their freshness and decrease in nutritional value. When you have to, when there's high food miles, it limits access. Okay. She's very distressed up here on the front row. Mama's an important. There she is. Local foods are more often harvested at brightness, which enhances their nutrition content. They're not ripened under lights or in artificial settings. When we rely on imported foods, it can lead to a less diverse diet, or, as is true for probably everyone, no matter how hard we try, we tend to favor convenience over nutritional quality. And of course, traveling more food miles impacts our environmental health as well. Have you ever heard of blue zones? I've obsessed with blue zones lately. I know, it's so fascinating to me. And there's some great documentaries about blue zones out there as well. There are Those are the original blue zones that were identified. And there are areas in the world that have the highest proportion of people who live to be 100 or older. Most people in blue zones are living 7 to 10 years longer than the average American. Is actually greater now since COVID. But on average, they also have lower rates of chronic diseases like cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and dementia. And so it begs the question, why? Like, what's the difference between where we live? And I think since the original blue zones have been identified, a couple more have been chosen or identified. But this is sort of the common denominators of the power line of the blue zones. Moving naturally. So people in blue zones tend to engage in regular low intensity physical activity as part of their lifestyle. There's not a lot of people going to the gym and doing crazy classes and that sort of thing. It's just an active lifestyle. There's a lot of gardening that happens, a lot of walking to town that happens. They have a purpose, have a clear sense of purpose. When's years to our life, quality years to our lives. They manage stress through relaxation techniques such as meditation or napping. I don't know last time I took a nap. But it sounds like a great idea. If you want to think through your life, it might be time to think about that. Generally speaking, they call it 80% rule, which they don't eat until they're just stuffed full. They just slower and more intentionally, and they don't overindulge and overeat. And most of all of the, well, actually, in all of those red zones, there's moderate red wine consumption, nothing crazy or out of control. There's a sense of belonging. Most people participate in the faith community, which provides social support. They prioritize family and maintain close relationships, which can enhance their emotional well-being. And they have supportive healthy friendships. But when you learn more about these blue zones and you look at how they're spread out all over the world, the thing that's interesting about them is their diets don't look the same. So it's not a one-stop shop or one-size-fits-all when it comes to nutrition or food as medicine or living longer. What a lot of it is related to is food mouth. They're eating a lot of things that are grown in their backyard or in their community, and that includes rice and pasta and bread and whatever else. So it begs the question, is it really all those things that we call the enemy in the country, or is it more about food miles and how we process it, how we raise it, what we do with it in between the field and the table that becomes the problem for your health? There are a lot of things to consider when you're thinking about a healthy diet. Genetics. When you think about someone whose ancestors were Eskimos, they probably don't need or aren't going to require the same diet as somebody whose ancestors were from South America. There's just a genetic difference sometimes in our makeup that influences how well we metabolize certain foods or certain food groups. And so that's something to be considered. And there's been a lot of progress made in that field. You can have swabs and tests now that will kind of look at your genetics and your DNA. They've taken ancestry.com databases and all this stuff and used, all this genetic and genome activity and can really kind of help you learn specifically for you what you'll metabolize well and not metabolize well. We've traditionally in medicine used BMI as a marker of a healthy body size, and that's certainly fallen out of favor, and I think that's a good thing. Because again, when you consider genetic makeups and backgrounds, you can't really compare apples and oranges. Here in the South, we call people big boned, but it really is sort of a thing. And so BMI is falling out of favor and more like body fat percentage and where your body fat and those sorts of things are what we are factoring in now. The Mediterranean diet is still one that we really lean heavily on in the traditional Western medicine field. But when you think about a Mediterranean diet, it's full of those superfoods and those clean foods. And so it's not rocket science to make the connection that it's a healthy diet. Of course, protecting agriculture is essential to food as medicine. If we can't grow food, produce food, and support our local agriculture and a country that can't feed its people, can't defend its people. And reducing food miles is important. So local food stands and what you are doing is important, critically important to food as medicine. So those are my kids. They were still young and cute and sweet. Another 15 and 13 and real mouthy. Um, precious, precious. But we have a cattle farm. We live on the farm my husband grew up on, and we've expanded that 30 years. We now have about 250 cattle, and we sell direct to consumer. We don't sell anything that wasn't born on our farm. So we're really trying to make that jump into regenerative farming, just sort of holistic farming. I'm not crazy big on the certified organic label because you certified organic and your neighbor's still spraying it. It's not really a real title, if that makes sense. It is, but it isn't. It's definitely never, but that is sort of what we're trying to do. So we don't spray anymore, those sorts of things. We picked Hereford and Angus breed cattle for just their sustainability here. They do well on these kinds of grasses that grow here. They are resilient, they're good size, they're manageable, they're pretty docile, they're also good flavor and good quality. But I'm in healthcare, so it was like a whole thing. But y'all remember going into the grocery store and maybe there wasn't beef, or maybe it's skyrocketed and shut down a lot of the packing plants in the Midwest. So that's what really pulled the trigger on saying, well, you know what, let's do this thing. Let's stop. Let's actually start selling the beef that we're raising direct to consumer. And so we also ran across Dr. Ben Blade is a PhD from Duke University, now at the University of Utah. And he's done a lot of his studies on grass-fed beef versus grain-fed beef. And he's even found that phytochemicals in grass-fed beef are higher than in wild caught salmon. So correlation is not causation. You can't directly say like, oh, guess what, grass-fed beef is going to be healthier than wild caught salmon for your heart. But you could start speculating that maybe it's not necessarily that red meat's the enemy. Again, like so many other things, it's all the processing and the grains and things that are being used for cattle that would make them less healthy. So I put those links on there, and they weren't working when I tried earlier. We sent samples of our beef to Dr. Van Blake's lab in Utah, and we actually sent winter cattle, which probably they received more hay, obviously, but it was hay that was off our farm, but stayed off our farm, and it was just super cool to get those reports back and all those phytochemicals mentioned earlier to see the different vitamins and minerals and fat percentage and all the things in there. So our plan is to send some beef samples from the summer, which have just been all grass fed and get a comparison report there as well. But it's sends your report back to you, you compare like your traditional like grain fed grocery store beef to yours, and so it's been impressive to kind of see the change in our farm and the biodiversity has occurred just from taking a more, for lack of better words, hands-off approach to your farm. Fewer inputs, maximize outputs, and letting God do his thing. The birds, the bees, the pollinators, all the things that start coming back. A lot of rotational grazing. The cows are still cows, and they only get out of the fence on Sunday morning when it's raining and you're already dressed for church. A couple other things I just wanted to highlight while I had the floor and the opportunity with this group is food scarcity in Carroll County is still a very real thing. I know that through 16 healthcare we have 6 or 7 little food pantries that we put out around our different offices, especially like at our pediatric offices, and we cannot keep them full. We cannot keep them stocked. And I know that all of our food banks are sort of feeling the same thing. But our food insecurity rate is 15% in our county, which is a little bit higher than the whole state of Georgia, the United States. which means that 15% of people in this community don't know where the next meal is going to come from. 19% of people have low incomes and do not live close to a grocery store. And from Plain Food Access, it states that 53% of Carroll County residents live in a low access area. By the 17 census tracts are USDA designated food desert. I have to look up what is a USDA food desert. But it's any area with limited access to affordable and nutritious food. So more than for us 10 miles from the nearest supermarket. So there's 22,000 food desert residents in our county. So even though we have all those advantages, most people still aren't very close to them. I'm sure my mother loves when we talk about her situations like this, but it just burns her up. And we'll stop at the pantry and then she sees someone pull up and they just whack the whole thing into their bag. And then one day I was thinking about it, I was like, hey, mother, if I literally did not know where my next meal was coming from and I had these kids at home, I'm not going to be worried about the person who's coming behind me. I'm going to get what I can get while I can get it because I got to feed these kids. And so it's hard. It's hard to know how to help and what to do about it. But I guess if we want to talk about that, then final takeaways would be call to action is a good rule of thumb, and kids even understand this, is eat the rainbow. You know, you want your plate to be colorful and not a goldfish kind of way, but in fruits and vegetables kind of colorful way. Sleep is next to food for good health. Staying active and engaged in your community is vital to living a long time and being in good health. Limiting ultra processed foods and enjoy superfoods as often as possible. Limit your food miles. Help protect and support your local farmers, your ag community, because the strong food system is a form of federal defense. And then help feed your communities, stock the pantries, grow a garden, show a child how to grow a plant and how to grow a garden. With the ag centers in here, or homes in here, and the backyard gardening, and the just talking about the backyard on a budget. Yeah, that's everybody can have a little garden, and everybody can grow their own food. If they're willing to do it and can learn how to do it. So I'm a big advocate for that being part of the whole educational process for all children, so that they can figure that out for themselves. And there are lots of good mental health benefits to gardening as well. Gardening is cheaper than therapy and you get tomatoes. And I saw a t-shirt that says, I like to garden because murder is against the law. Whichever way you want to look at that. All right, again, y'all for your patience with me on a sort of scattered day. Y'all have questions or comments on anything? Third. We do. Of course, all of our providers are different. Not everybody lives on a farm and knows how to garden, but it's certainly something that we're all aware of and try to talk to. Common pieces of advice you get is shop the perimeter of the grocery store, try to stay out of the middle and the processed aisles, but canned vegetables are still vegetables. And so people are often worried about fresh foods because the cost or they expire or whatever. So even frozen options. So we do a lot of nutritional counseling as well. We're living in a time of weight loss craze. All the new medications on the market for that, which are super effective and helpful. And there's a place for all of that, but combined with the support like learning how to eat, and learning how to eat healthy and make healthier choices is changing people's lives for the better. The use of AI is always like a really hot button topic, no matter where you're speaking or what you're speaking about. But I will say that one thing that's been helpful for us in our medical practice is we use a platform called Open, which is a peer-reviewed, validated medical resource. So if I need to look up how to treat high blood pressure. God help me, I don't have to look that up at this point in my career, but let's just say, look at that. That's, you know that you go to a reliable source to look up medical information. Well, now they have an AI platform, so I can go in there and say, I'm a 65-year-old male with diabetes and high blood pressure, and he doesn't like nuts. It needs to be low sodium, and he has a budget of $75 a week for groceries. Creating a meal plan and a grocery list, and it'll spit out like that. And so that is a helpful tool that we can give patients, because it's surprising sometimes people just genuinely don't know what is healthy and what is not healthy. And so being able to create something like that simply and quickly has been a good tool for people. Open evidence. I think so. So, I mean, it's all medical jargon, but I mean, and there may be like a license fee to get full access, but you know you're getting a lot of information. So, anybody else?
How do you do it all?
I have a lot of good help, a lot of really good help. Nobody in my family is excused from work, ever. I really have a lot of good help. And when you love what you're doing, and you're passionate about what, I joke, we work for fun. It doesn't, no matter what you're doing, some days feel like work. Even in your garden, some days feel like work. But for the most part, we're just having a good time.
It's okay. It something you can discuss, like those new intents food we can grow in our garden.
Yes. Yeah, I saw some people taking pictures, so I'll go back to that slide. Those are 25 superfoods that grow in this USDA. So, and I have failed at most of them, but I keep trying. Great backyard experiments. I've also had more salons than 25 Mexican restaurants for the reasons. All right, well, thank you again for having me tonight.
Okay, I think we'll take about a 10, 15 minute bathroom break, or if y'all want some seconds, thirds, dessert, whatever y'all can help yourselves. And then we will start our community panel. So if you're not familiar with our conference style panels, it will be 4 panelists, that will introduce you, kind of, we'll get to know their background, and then we'll take questions from the audience for any of the panelists, and kind of talk about how to create a homesteading community wherever you plan to. Thank you. This was the idea I anticipated and received. So wherever you put it, it's built. And just something type of them. Yeah, I'll have it. But it's what's the other one? Yeah, which that all in Peru. This year I bought beans, potatoes, bread. Beans, I have bread. Yeah, I love things, but this kind of our taste. And passing out plans. And Rosa would. I know, even berries. Like, yeah, now I'm not spinning. Yeah, and it's, I've got so much of it, it's just going great. Yeah, and it drops the berries, you know, that's what it reseeds, so I mistakenly put it in my garden. And then now, years later, I'm just pulling it up, but yes, so I've got it really, and I'm about to start freeze drying it, powder. Powdered on those videos. Yeah, it's actually like, it tastes, people, some people really like it. I like it sauteed with garlic and onion. Yes, and you can also leave it this big, you can make it in a wrap, but yeah. You don't know what that is. Wow. When you cook it down, then it, well, no. I have a vegetarian. And they just make just like people went like from crunch. Okay. Yeah. Grinders it. Yeah, I've heard. Like, why are you eating it? It's like anybody. It just, it's, you have to let it grow on something. Yeah, so I'm gonna put it in my house and I'm ready. You could. I would have, and something Alaska. So I have a ton of, if anyone wants to. I am, Secretary Road, that's how. That's cool. So like, is that? That is south, you know where, I mean, let me just come here to you. Okay, so, you know what Walmart, okay, so if you go south, that's down that way, you turn left. Not that far. We're in like, we're off of Road, okay. Yeah. So, but that's like southwest. Okay, that's your, what's your there? Literally, we're like, our 10 minutes. Okay, okay. Yeah. I have 15. Oh. I have, I think already my whole life. Family. So yes, everybody. And so, and I think Army. And so, and I march for it. And think, oh, and so I don't do with no till. That's fine. Yeah, it's for the yeah. But, any amount that Someday. It's hard. Burn and rainy here. Does he have options? Are they both in German? Oh. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. Thinking like,
Yeah, yeah.
got that last time.
Life comes at you fast. Now. Back. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. So,
So that's right? Now, when I started. No, no. Tomatoes actually. I have white with the bottom. The rest of the it's not. All right. Can I get our panelists up here in the hot seat? All right, so I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves. So while they're talking, kind of be thinking in your mind of the questions you have for them. I will come to you with the mic and just raise your hand for questions. And it can be something not community related. I was just thinking, homesteading can be isolating. Not many people choose to live this lifestyle. And so you kind of get in your own little world of to-do lists and your own goals. But there is benefit in having homestead community and being able to call someone to help you process your chickens. And Chris can tell you how he met my friend Mike bacon when he needed to process his chickens for the first time, or I don't know if that was your first time, but so it's just putting yourself out there and meeting people that are close to you wherever God's planted you. So I'll start with Paula. She'll introduce herself.
So we're not gonna get into what we do yet, right? Just introduce ourselves.
Your homesteading background and kind of like what farm experience, homesteading experience you have, and
Right. So Paula Burger, and so I've been doing extension work now for 33 years, but I grew up having horses. I was like the animal kid. My parents were the city folk, and I wanted to ride horses, and so I went to school. I'm originally from upstate New York, and got an animal science degree, and lived on my former husband's family farm, and we raised dairy replacement heifers, we raised beef cattle, just on a small scale. We did a lot of raising of food for his family. He was one of 8, so his parents did a lot of huge gardens. I actually got my mother-in-law had a can. My mother didn't do any of that, so that really came later in life. And I got into sheep for a little while and raised some Scottish black-faced sheep that were dual purpose sheep. And then few years later, after divorce, wound up meeting my now husband, and we actually raised a ton of sheep over in Alabama. And we obviously go for meat, and we sell at a farmer's market. We bought about 4 acres, and just use sheep alone for meat. But I think probably my role, definitely want to talk about today, but if you have questions, is as an extension agent, we're always we always work with farmers, but we've really embraced working with the people that are homesteading, or really people that you have some land and you want to grow your own food, and then sometimes it gets out of control in a good way, and you become a full-time farmer and all that. But we get a lot of calls at the extension office. I have some land, what can I do with it? So with that, we've been able to really do some programming and be a good resource for you, so we can talk about that a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of my homestead background.
all right, I'm Angelina Weiner. And also I like when she started, we have a small sheep farm off of Happy Hill, so we're local here. And we are a little more like sheep to soak is kind of what I like to say, sheep to soak, using the whole animal. But a little background, I did not grow up on a farm. I did not marry into a farm. I didn't do any of those things. I was a homeschool mom. That eventually went back to school to be a nurse. And shortly after graduating nursing school, I don't know if anybody else was around 2010-ish, 11, I saw the Food Inc. documentary done on Netflix. Anybody else see the documentary? But it took all the education, all the pieces, and all the things, and I looked at it, and I wanted to go to the stores and buy all organic food. And I wanted to, you wanted to take all the things from your house, and you wanted to make sure that you were giving your children and your family good, healthy, and clean things. But the Lord just prompted in my heart, just do what you can. I got this. I have the stuff, And I look back on that thinking, He said, we don't despise small beginnings, because what the journey that we went on from that point on, it's been amazing. I just heard Emily asking me to speak. I was able to like think back on like, well, what got us here? And that just came from making small changes and small switches in our homes and with our food and educating ourselves on food. I've been a home health nurse for 15 years. And a lot of that is meeting people where they're at and talking about what they can exchange when somebody's giving them a health diagnosis of something and they need to make food changes or have different changes in their home. And I'm sitting with them in their home. And sometimes when you suggest something, it's really foreign or far off, or that seems too expensive, or it's too big, or it's too much. And you really have to say, well, let's start small. Let's start here, and let's make this change. And we'll check in and see how that's going. And I love being a home health nurse here in our community, getting to know families, getting to know histories, getting to know stories. A huge part of the job is just listening to people's stories and how they got where they are. And so for me, our story is it brought us to looking at our 7.5 acres and saying, Lord, what did you give us? Instead of looking at everything else, what did you give us? I was given a $15 bar of goat milk soap. And I was like, well, through all that other process, I taught myself to can. We've always made things from scratch. But in that soap, I was like, oh, you know what? I haven't done soap, but I was not going to go and buy goats. I was not going to go buy a herd of goats. So I was like, we have to do, but why can't you? Why can't you make sheep milk soap? Why don't we make sheep milk soap? Is this a thing? And it burst. So one thing led to another. It started with sheep milk soap that you absolutely can. It has wonderful fatty acids to add to that soap. It has wonderful properties to add to that soap. And then I was starting to have grandchildren at this time. So sheep milk soap was like, well, why wouldn't we have lotion? What's in our lotion? What's in our skincare? So I went from like, what's in our food and medicine to, okay, what's in our skincare? What are we putting on the largest organ of our body? It went to a whole other level. So yeah. So now we make an entire natural skincare, cheap soap. We do katana doors, and we produce meat for our family. And hopefully in the future, it'll be for others also. So it'll be our meat, it'll be our soap, and our skincare. And so I'm really excited about that. I love talking about it. So you guys can ask any questions.
Is this on? I'm Grant Wallace. I've been a farmer and homesteader for 15 years. Kind of what Paula said, when I started my garden, started getting way too much. And then that's my kids, I've got my 3 boys over there. That's on the way. They've been a big inspiration for the homesteading. I'm sure that's the case with a lot of people here. So for community aspects though, I think part of the sales of everything at the farm, so like to the farmers markets, meeting people there and becoming friends with people there. And basically, my best friends are chefs and I like to, meeting people with like those like-minded interests and with the food. That's helped me meet a lot of people. More recently, we got out into the farmers markets in Atlanta, so I was kind of tired of doing all that, and we opened up my version of the modern country store in Buckhannon, Georgia. It's called Moody Mart. So that's where I'm selling my produce now, dried herbs and tea blends, and also got a bunch of other Georgia-grown products. So we're trying to build a little bit of a community from Moody Mart as well. And more recently, I got my real estate license too, and started farm and garden properties to help other people, get connected with their own homesteads and land. Trying to really promote West Georgia as a homestead area too. And, have like a kind of an active approach on getting more people involved, in my life for that.
My name's Chris Musselwhite. Colorado Farms. In 2019, wound up with an intestinal infection in my lower intestines. Almost died from it. That's kind of what started me on my journey. Dr. F. Dodd at the Coliseum come sat down beside me one day in the hospital room and told me, he says, Chris, you need to start eating natural. Thought I was eating natural. I stayed on the road constantly. And I would run through drive-throughs and things like that. What actually made me very sick. And I lost my lower intestine. I battled that for about a year. And by him telling me that, it made me really start thinking what I needed to do. I mean, I needed to start eating natural. I needed to start eating like my grandparents ate. So I started doing a bunch of research over the years and found a lot of things within our food industries and stuff are not healthy for us at all. So I took the 16 acres that I've got, my parents had, and slowly have turned it into a farm over the past 5 years. We now raise more goats, we raise cattle and sheep. We have a hoop house. It took us 2.5 years to get, but we sold about 2,000 and some plants out of this past. We're slowly building things up and trying to get the community involved. And this year was our first year of really seeing profits from everything that we've done. And we're just going to continue to grow from there. We raise chickens, meat chickens, we've got turkeys, we've got egg layers, we've even got rabbits. But we're slowly building up so that maybe one day we can have a store on our farm.
Okay. Repositioning we're broadcasting this on our YouTube channel for a podcast recording, just FYI. The faces won't be on it, but listen to something later. Who wants to be brave and ask the first question?
I have a question about you said it was a hoop house that you recently completed. Did you get that through like a grant or how were you able to fund that?
We got it from a grant, USDA, so they provided half the money up front. I provided another. And once it was completed, they paid me back for mine. Does that make sense?
It's
So they paid for half up front, I paid for the other half. Once I built the hoop house and got it completely finished, they reimbursed me my part. Yeah, it really helped out.
and this is through the USDA?
Yes, it was a 20 by 40. Yeah, 20 by 40 hoop house. We ran it for the first time this year. Had great success with it.
And this is a grant that you applied for?
Correct.
So not everybody will be given the grant. But
Not everybody. Took us 2 years to actually get the hoop house. Once all the paperwork and everything was trying to.
yeah, how do you qualify for a grant like that?
You get people with the USDA to come out and survey the land and everything, look at where you're gonna put it, they give you suggestions and everything. You fill out all the paperwork, they continually come back and check to make sure you're not putting chickens or sheep in or something like that. You're actually utilizing for what you need to utilize.
And is there something that they want you to utilize it for specifically?
To grow vegetables.
Thank you.
They typically want you growing in the soil. USDA, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, their building they're across the street in the county building there. If you're in Carroll County, or Hudson County, those are the counties that they service. But they're all about, soil conservation and planting things in the soil. So you can't use it as a greenhouse or growing things in pots. They want you growing in the soil. And then it helps with season extension, maybe get started earlier or going later into the season with your fruits and vegetables.
And Paula, recently, I think you introduced me to the Carroll County NRCS person. What was her name?
So the most recently new person in charge of the office here, her name is Carol Lee Johnston, and she's with the USDA NRCS. Now, there's also USDA Farm Service Agency. They're in the same office building, share the same space, but they do different things. So typically you have to go and talk to the Farm Service Agency first and get a farm number and kind of get registered, so to speak. Like for instance, if you're a farmer and you have a drought in our area that's designated for drought funds, you can go talk to the Farm Service Agency. But the NRCS office, Natural Resources Conservation Service, they're all about helping us manage the land, do things like if you have cattle or livestock in general, you want to, they won't pay for the perimeter fence, but they want to encourage you to do rotational grazing, so they'll pay for cross fencing. They'll help you put in water lines, so you have water in all your pastures. Again, all the maybe planting grasses or maybe spraying herbicides. It's all about managing the soil and doing it properly and healthy for your farm. And so they're the federal government, and they have funds that you can qualify for. And you'd have to ask them specifically, because obviously it's not my office, but you'd have to talk to them about how you qualify. I know the hoop houses though, a lot of homesteaders, type people that aren't necessarily farming, have gotten some from them. But a lot of their funds are definitely folks that are actually trying to farm.
She did say, with the lady for the USDA, she said this is a good year for farmers to be asking for money because a lot of them are getting what they're asking for, not having to pay very little. What she told me when I had some questions for her. So go see her over at the office if you're local. Anybody else have another question?
Question. So started making soaps and obviously talent and other things out of Cheetah. And obviously started a business with that instead of right. It's not selling. Is there a type of exactly how to ask this question, but is there something that you have to apply for or do to be able to sell those type of products? You know what I mean? Like selling food, you might not have a cottage permit or whatever.
No, there's no. So the only regulation is that all of your ingredients need to be on your labels. And the order of what's the most.
But there's nothing else that's required.
And lastly, you cannot make claims. So that you cannot make claims, so claims. I infuse it with this, that, and the other herb, or I can do all those things, but so claims. And all of my skincare, there's the ingredients, but you can't make claims because you fall into a cosmetic and medical claim, then you would be testing, you would, different things. So it's just, you have to be careful not to make.
And then claim source just like your regular business license that would be. Nothing. No,
I'm just gonna say sometimes you just stop asking what you shouldn't do anything you wanna do, but that's totally different. And also if you have herbs and that kind of thing, I have found that just putting the blanket, and these plants have not been verified by the FDA. And these are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure disease, that kind of thing. Almost have to put that on all their stuff.
Now, question for you, I guess, because like about your picture, when you're selling stuff like that, is there a particular thing that you have to have? Be able to sell stuff like that? No, you don't have to have anything, even
Put all
what
the
it contains.
I put everything about, getting up on my brain.
Now, what do you do, like, obviously, tinctures are for medicinal purposes, but obviously, like, if you have like, what do you do as far as like, maybe people that might be wanting to buy tinctures, do you have to be careful to,
Technically, yes, but If the teacher comes with the category powder like alcohol.
Okay.
It's like a whole food. And you think of it like it's just food and it's a byproduct of food like the can. I guess I wanted to help her explain this because, yes, it's kind of like bringing your awareness to learn about that particular thing, but you can't.
Yeah, so I just had a question about that. Yeah, like I said, a lot of times things are kind of stingy these days, even with buying, even like certain cough medicines or being 18 to buy bleach. I mean, we're living in a weird time where,
Well, most of those companies, if they're buying, like, they've already gotten whatever testing that they need for us that we're growing on herbs and we're making our foods and our medicines from those things. You can kind of know, like, I know to work some anti-inflammatory.
the alcohol as far as tinctures. That's why I was asking the question on that. Yeah, she does. We're living in a time where, coughs are okay. Alcohol content, so just
Anyone else have a question?
So I heard you talk a little bit about, Mooney Martin, you said you sold dry teas. And I saw you brought some tea to the potluck tonight. I just wanted to know a little bit about the process of making those teas. And, maybe some of your favorite tea plants.
Well, thank you, Harrison, for the thoughtful question. Yeah, so we have a perennial herb garden at our farm. And every year it's a big activity that once all the herbs start to flower, we've got to cut them down, rubber band them, and then take them up to our barn loft, like an old hay loft, and, hang them up on the lines up there. We do about 750 bunches at a time. And then, if the weather's right, when it's good, and if the weather's dry and hot, then they could dry out in like a week or two. And then we start processing all of them down. And then that's where it gets really fun is that you get to take all these herbs and start creating your own, tea blends. So kind of based on your own, flavors and taste and what your family likes. And you can also do, spice blends with those too. So tonight in the back corner, we brought Refresh, which is a simple one, just lemon balm and pineapple. It's next to those other cancers that tea back there kind of wants to try.
Do you know what are some of the bonuses or what's good for you about lemon balm and pineapple?
Well, lemon balm's known to be, pretty like anti-anxiety, helps you relax. And it's not, with the herbs, there's not a lot of like hard effects from them. So these are more like subtle things that we can do for ourselves, It's kind of like preventative maintenance, I guess, for ourselves. And it's something that as we make the different blends, we'll keep trying them out and see, what the effects are for us. So sometimes you go in there with one idea, but then after you're drinking them for a while, you have kind of a different expectation of drinking that.
Thank you.
So, this is like farming.
So, okay. Does anyone want to take that one? What does farming do spiritually?
It connects you with the land. I wake up every morning looking forward to seeing my goats, my sheep, my chickens. I go out every morning, I pick up a couple eggs, I take them back inside. I pull out some pork out of the refrigerator that I raised, and I cook it all up for breakfast. That's all right there from my land. I don't have to worry about going to the grocery store or anything like that. Everything we do on the farm is natural. I mentioned that, but we use no chemicals. I try not to give any of my animals antibiotics. If they get sick, I call them. I rotate them out. I try to build the genetics, and that's one thing we're definitely working strong on. is building strong genetics within our farm. We, as far as our pastures, we live in really sandy soil. So I really have to work very hard. It's like living in a desert to build my soil up so that I can actually start producing good grass. Finally, I've got two good pastures that I can rotate my sheep and my goats on. I'm not buying a bunch of food from the markets, or I'm not buying a bunch of hay from other people. I will substitute, but I mean, if they can survive on what I'm giving them and they can keep their good weight gain, then why go out and get anything else? I mean, you got to think about it. Back in the days, I mean, the bison didn't go by Tractor Supply to get feed at all. They lived off the land. And that's what we need to get back to, is having tannins planted in the pasture so that way they actually deworm themselves naturally. And the grasses that they're eating are high protein and give them the nutrients that they need to survive.
I wanted to add to your spiritual farming just because it's really close to my heart with my sheep and going into really forming our whole business and farm and homestead and everything around our sheep. I've learned so much about why the Lord put sheep and called us sheep and talked about sheep so often in His Word. And for me, farming with my sheep it draws me close every day. It reminds me of the thankfulness. There's so many good things, and every time I learn one of those awesome things about our sheep, it just reminded me of the goodness He put here for us. And mentally farming, getting your hands dirty in the soil, there's studies that show that the microbiome in the soil actually fight your depression, mental depression. So you can actually, fight some mental health issues by just getting your hands dirty, gardening. That's why some people call it their happy place, because it does make you happy, not besides, getting fruit for your labor, but that's a real interesting thing. I think, okay, Ginger has a question. So 3 of y'all have businesses, and so how can we support your business? Like, where are you? You can order online. So we have, I have an online website, it's waymakerfarmery.com. And we are currently building an on-site building and shop so that I can produce more than what, and so that you can come to our farm to see, again, sheep to serve. And just wanted to educate people on where all of our things come from. There was just a little piece. A Happy Hill, Carrollton. And just past Clem direction, Carrollton.
So, all my products we found at Mooney Mark, which is the MOONIE Mark. That's in Buchanan. It's about 25 minutes north from here. There's all my herbs there, sometimes fresh, but all of them dried as well. The tea blends, and then, as we do produce, it's in there too. So right now we have cabbages, peppers, tomatoes. And we're gonna be getting into pumpkins and hopefully some melons here pretty soon too. But that store is open 6 days a week, 12 to 6. We also have a small cafe and have coffee, towards the ground ice cream too. Anymore, yeah, we have an online store too, where we do deliveries in a certain, perimeter. And then you can also do, online pickup. It's mooneymarks.com. Mooneymarks.com.
Brand, do you still do a farmer's market at your farm on Sundays?
No, we stopped doing that. We just put on.
So one of the things with our question is there's homesteaders in here, we need to start supporting each other. So if you've got a store in Concord, she's got one up north, I've got one in Macon, we need to come together and start helping each other by carrying each other's products and supporting each other. That's the only way we're going to survive. As far as your products too, I mean, we need to get them in everybody's stores that has them. And start diversifying. I've talked with a lot of farmers that they wanted to keep everything close to their belt and do what they were just doing, but in order for us to grow and to compete with the bigger markets, we've got to get together and stick together and grow together.
So Emily, I want to mention, finding local farmers and other homesteaders. Alex and I do a farm and food resource guide. It's on our table. We actually partner with Tanner Health System. Alex and I recruit all the farmers, people that have something to sell, and Tanner puts the guide together for free. So, so we're always looking for other folks that have farm products to sell or services. Let us know. It's probably too late for this year, but definitely next year. It's a great free advertisement, and then also people can find you as well. And Carol's Heard in Pauli County, folks can be included in.
Yeah, I think it's important, like you're saying, to support each other because right now, the way our food industry is, it is not where we want it to be, but until we as consumers start changing our purchasing habits, where we buy our meat from, you know, who we're buying our veggies from, if you can't grow something, buy it from a farmer in your community if you're able. So I think that is really important, you know, talking about business, homestead community and supporting each other locally as much as possible. And Emily here has a question for Chris. Yes, you said you had sheep and goats. Do you rotate them together?
I do. I rotate them together, and then for a little while I'll separate them also. But they do stay in the same pasture a lot of times. The sheep will stay down at the bottom, and the goats will stay on top, and the goats will stay in the wooded area.
Do you feed them the same mineral?
No,
You have to be careful about sheep and goats and what mineral you feed them. Sheep can be sensitive to too much copper. So if you're gonna have them together, make sure it's a sheep labeled, mineral, would be my suggestion.
definitely. That's why I say I separate them sometimes, and they're running different paddocks, so that way I can give them the minerals they need and things of that.
I refer to young farmers and cattlemen as our support group. Is there anything like that the state might, sponsor for homesteaders?
So I think you asked about the young farmers and cattlemen.
Yeah, that's, you know, that, for Tim and I, that's our support group. Is there anything like that available for homesteaders?
So that's a great question. So in a lot of counties across the state, to some other states, there's state cattlemen's groups that have county local chapters. So cattlemen and women come together and learn about cattle. Or here in Carroll County, we have a fantastic young farmer group that Northern word young, it's for all ages. But every month they have all sorts of different topics. Like they just had a woman last week here talking about agritourism. So specifically a homesteading group, no. But I think we're very fortunate here between the various extension offices, young farmers, cabinet, depending on what your interests are in learning, we offer a lot. Most of it happens right here in this building, Carroll County Ag Center. Every week we've got multiple different groups. This building is here for education, agricultural education for the community. As an extension office, we're blessed we can do all our programming here. So, but that might be something to, you know, try to bring a homesteading group together. But obviously be a little bit different focus, but some of the topics are already being done, especially like at the young farmers. They do classes on fruits, vegetables, they'll bring in people from all over. They process a deer right here. And pig out back. So there's, if you want to get connected, all those things that are already happening. Again, Alex and I have a sheet at our desk. We have an ag email newsletter that we do about once or twice a month, depending on how busy we are. We put out an email of all the different agricultural related things that we know about that we're doing or other groups that we partner or collaborate with. So if you're not on that list, I know some of you are, if you're not on that list and you want to know what's happening, help learn more, build your knowledge, we welcome you to join.
was primarily networking that I was thinking it would be very beneficial in something like young farmers that was just for homesteaders.
So what I find is you gotta have some people, you mentioned about, networking and coming together. If you want to have a group, you gotta have some people that are interested and get it together and plan it. If you want a place to host it, you can talk to Alex and I, we'd have to figure out kind of the schedule, what that would look like, but.
As a homesteading Facebook group. We have about 1,000 people, in our Facebook group. Most of them are local to this area, but it's intended for homesteaders to be able to reach out and meet other people, introduce themselves in the group. I had one gentleman who was asking about, poultry processing equipment. I have a collector. If anyone needs to borrow it, you may get one of my business cards from the back, and I just used it for her chickens. And, those kind of things are helpful to know people in the community. You don't have to go out and buy equipment for that. Our Facebook group is Farmstead Forum. And we also host an annual conference. Last year we had it here at the Ag Center in November. Hopefully in the spring we'll have it March, April. Still waiting on a date to reserve. But there's nothing like, were you asking about something at the state level, like for networking purposes?
Yeah, there's also Georgia Organics. I see a lot of homesteaders maybe fitting into that again. Although that's, probably focusing also on full-time farmers, which you agree, Alex, Georgia Organics. They have an annual conference, they run around the state. But yeah, I haven't seen, other than I forgot about Emily's work that she's doing. Sorry, I forgot about that, but it's an official homesteading, networking. I don't really see any of that activity happening on the state level that I'm aware of.
Anybody else have a question? I have a question for y'all, because all of you, I believe, were you at the conference for a little bit and Alex was there, Paula? Were you, okay, guys. How can I plan and integrate for community time at the conference? Because I feel like it's really busy, so I'm gonna try to cut back on, how much busy stuff we have going on next year. But do y'all have any, tips or ideas on how to facilitate this like homestead networking among our attendees that come to the conference? Y'all have any suggestions to the schedule or?
I think, maybe some DIY activities, like a group, activity, something like that. Maybe we're taking looks at each other's plans or, garden planting plans or something for the year. Recipe swaps or the seed swaps or something like that. And then, like what Jim was saying with the business stuff, I think maybe some way that we could share, all the different. So I was saying that's how we kind of help build community and homestead is selling to your neighbors and other people and also buying from them. So I think, just kind of knowing that would help too, because then when we leave, still calling that person to buy from them too.
I feel like a networking table that people can leave their business cards and then other people can peruse that table and pick up cards where they're interested. Yeah, she was saying that, so we had vendors at the conference last year. We had 35 vendors, I believe. So like, for instance, Grant was a speaker, Chris was a speaker. They each had a table. Or Grant, they were offered a table and they could put anything out they wanted to sell from their store or from their farm. So, that's another good way to support people locally. And I've met Angelina through different vendors events. And then she wanted to come to the farm so far. So like Angelina was a vendor at our conference the last 2 years. And also the seating. I think the round tables are great for conversation. The round tables are good if you're going to talk with the people. And I know that capacity and all of that, but if it's possible to do the round tables, I think that that was really helpful, because I know like I would sneak out from behind my booth and go talk and sit beside somebody and talk to them. So. Hey, any other questions? Nope. Okay, thank y'all so much to everyone on the panel for participating. Got everyone. And we have it's either 12 or 14 raffle items, and I have like 10 or 12 tickets in the basket. So if anybody wants to purchase a raffle ticket before we call the raffle, you can get the back table, but I'll call it in just a few minutes.
Do you have any other variations that you do, or just like? Right, yeah. Yeah. Our last house. Like 35 years. It's like number 20. Yeah. Yeah, no, I joke, but that's the reason she does not like the birds at all. But like her and her boys and the chickens are out there. Yeah, you can find them over right now. It's a good time for around like 6 like that. We're charging for it. We got more than we could do.
No,
Your maneuver. Or yeah, we're kind of surprising, right? Like that same property, you kind of say that it really and like it looked like it had some pretty big growth on it. Never really. Yeah, they're
we had a problem. Yes. Sure, something else. Some of them. Just. Yeah.
Right. Somebody else like this.
Okay.
We did, we're at my place, painted those, but there's still plenty to go. Yes. What's the scale of your which is neat because it makes you get creative. But it's like very active. It's all how to manage it.
Yes. It's far less.
Really good.
Some normal regular, right? So then, online with me. Now, some of my I have to, my own city, my own, those very, like certain. Sage inside the sage.
And the idea of it, like, weekly, sometimes it gets past the thing. But, like, we have a go through. Like, we didn't put it up. Have it all around. Pick up stuff. And they're managed. Yeah. Another place, yeah. We were able to get a garden. Yeah. Unfortunately, there wasn't any like or
There's some crazy. Yeah, contrast. Now,
that was specific.
I'm not sure. It's work about how she's selling her soap, like at that contract. Person talk to her. Yeah.
They're doing this on meeting. Like, from the earth. The marriage if we had somebody that we did so that's you know, they find get it up. We write a letter, writing hair. What's gonna write me? That too. Because first I totally get like 30 right? That's
Right.
the chicken doesn't like